First this morning, the FAI has confirmed that the Republic of Ireland will fulfil two fixtures against Israel in the Nations League. Yesterday, Ireland was drawn in Group B3 with Israel, Austria and Kosovo. It's just been announced that Ireland will play Israel away on September the 27th and at home on October the 4th. In November, the FAI overwhelmingly approved a motion calling on UEFA to ban Israel from European club and international competitions. In a moment, we'll hear from two members of the Oireachtas Sports Committee, Sinead Gibney of the Social Democrats and Fianna Fáil's Pádraig O'Sullivan. But first to Gavin Cooney, sports writer and broadcaster with the 42. Gavin, good morning to you.
Morning, David.
The FAI very quick out of the traps yesterday, immediately after the draw was made, to say, yes, we will be playing these matches.
Yeah, there was a 25% chance that Ireland would draw Israel in yesterday's draw event, David, and the FAI were prepared for the scenario that they did not want to arise. So within minutes of the draw's conclusion, they had a quick statement issued to journalists confirming that they would be fulfilling the fixture. Obviously, the context in which they're issuing that statement is, as you've alluded to in your introduction, that last November an FAI EGM passed a motion calling on the FAI executive to formally request of UEFA that Israel be banned. Now, that meant that the FAI were the first and they remain the only UEFA member association to formally request of UEFA that Israel be kicked out of competitions. UEFA's response to the FAI was effectively, we've duly noted that, lads, but we're not going to do that, pointing them to the decision in October 2023 in the wake of the initial attacks by Hamas. That ruled that in which UEFA ruled that Israel would continue to play in their competitions, but would play at neutral venues and therefore not in Israel. So the FAI statement is very much like the Irish basketball situation that arose a couple of years ago, that we're affiliated to UEFA, we're playing in a UEFA competition. Israel are in there at the imprimatur of UEFA. We have to play these games or otherwise we'd face sanctions.
Yeah, and those sanctions could be fairly serious, I think, couldn't they?
Yeah, I mean, the FAI statement does allude to what they may be. It can range from the forfeiting of the fixture to further disciplinary measures, including potential disqualification from the competition. And given the extent to which the FAI, like many other member associations, are reliant on the money that comes from competing in UEFA competitions, that is why they will be so concerned about those kinds of sanctions.
Yeah. Now, as you say, the EGM last year, there was overwhelming support, I think, for the motion calling for Israel to be banned. So there's going to be a bit of pressure coming from the FAI's own members and constituencies about whether these games should be played or where they should be played.
Yeah, I would expect so, David. Obviously, they went through their own formal steps in passing that motion, and as you mentioned, it was passed by an overwhelming majority. I think there was only maybe 2 votes against and 4 abstentions. The FAI did obviously go through the formal channels with UEFA, and the FAI will say, well, look, we've made our case, and this is ultimately UEFA's decision. I think it is worth monitoring how many of those who supported that motion kind of react to that, and how they deem the FAI to have argued their case before UEFA. Was it argued vociferously enough? And then, leaving aside even issues among the FAI's own membership, this fixture will also throw up issues around, will Irish fans boycott? If the Irish team won't boycott the fixture, will Irish supporters boycott the fixture? Or will they want to turn up and make their protest heard?
Yeah, I suppose the big issue is where these games are going to be played. Israel are still playing in neutral venues, are they?
As it stands, they are. Yeah, they still want to bring the games back to Israel. Their first social media post after the draw said their ultimate ambition is to bring these games home. But as it stands, these games will be in neutral venues. Israel have played most of their games to this point in Hungary, played all of their World Cup qualifiers there last year in front of fans, both home and away. And then Ireland obviously will have home advantage against Israel. You would expect that game to be in Dublin. The Israel FA told us at the 42 this morning that they are happy to travel to Dublin for that fixture, and they say it's entirely a decision for the FAI. So as you know, Israel are happy to travel to Dublin, so it's down to the FAI as to whether they want to host them here.
Well, that's a big question, isn't it? Because I presume there's huge security concerns. One would assume there might be protests and all the rest of it. So it's a huge policing operation apart from anything else. I mean, is there any danger of the FAI deciding no, let's go for a neutral venue ourselves, or even play behind closed doors?
I don't know that, David. The FAI haven't said anything to that effect. While they rushed out a statement yesterday, the CEO, David Correll, and the President, Paul Cook, did not stop for media questioning at the draw in Brussels yesterday. So I don't know what the FAI's thinking is on it at the moment. They don't have to confirm the venue until 120 days, so 4 months ahead of the game. So they have a bit of time to make the decision. There is precedent for moving these games. While most teams have hosted Israel as normal in the last couple of years in competitive games, Belgium moved a Nations League game in 2024 away from Brussels and behind closed doors in a neutral venue in Hungary, citing security concerns. So there is a precedent there if the FAI wish to follow it, but at this point, it's unclear what the FAI's thinking is on it.
Okay, you mentioned basketball. I mean, that was a pretty fraught issue. How did that play out?
That played out with the games happening. So the Ireland women's basketball team were drawing against Israel. I think it was a World Cup qualifier back in, I think initially in 2024, and they've subsequently played them again. The organisation and the team themselves came under significant pressure to boycott the fixture, and Basketball Ireland's stance was, we're not going to. They made protests at the game. I believe they refused to shake hands with their opponents, but they ultimately said, not dissimilar to the FAI statement we read yesterday, that the governing body have allowed Israel to compete in this competition. If we don't fulfill our fixtures, we'll be very heavily sanctioned. And the Basketball Ireland CEO, John Feehan, put it pretty bluntly and said he will not ruin the sport here in Ireland for a gesture that, in his words, would have no impact.
Okay, Gavin, thank you for that. A lot of text coming in. Jerry says, so it's okay for Ireland to pull out of Eurovision and deprive those fans of Ireland's participation, but when it comes to football and their fans, that's a different story. You can't pick and choose morals. Our Republic of Ireland football fan says we should play Israel. I will attend the game and clap for the Israeli anthem and fly their flag with the Irish flag, play the game. Another texter says Irish fans should not travel or attend, end of. And then another one says if Ireland refused to play Israel in football, we'd need to draw up a full list of countries we won't play, or is Israel the only country in the world we shouldn't play? Well, to get some political reaction, I'm joined on the line by Sinead Gibney, Social Democrat TD for Dublin Rathdown, and Pádraig O'Sullivan, Fianna Fáil TD for Cork North Central, both members of the Oireachtas Sports Committee. Sinead, to you first. What's your view on this game? Should it go ahead?
I think the most important voice that I want to hear from right now is the players. I think we have to understand that this is such a difficult situation for them. They are elite athletes at the pinnacle of their career, and they are not right now being put in a very, very difficult situation. So I think it's very easy for everybody around to speculate and say they should or shouldn't. But ultimately, they are the people who step on the pitch, and we need to respect that they are the ones who need to be first and foremost in this decision-making process. I mean, I think what we saw play out from Basketball Ireland, and you're right to raise it. I mean, the experience of the team, I think, was really quite difficult, particularly with the IDF standing around one of the fixtures with machine guns. You know, I mean, I think they're the people who really will bear the brunt of this. But obviously, the scale here is very, very different with a fixture, you know, a soccer fixture like this. Drawing the crowds that it would draw potentially if it was in Ireland, and then obviously, as you've discussed, the many, many decisions around it, around potentially playing abroad, around the sanctions that would follow. I mean, for me, it is the sports governing bodies who are the decision makers who have to be held to account for this, and UEFA should be excluding Israel. There's just no question around it.
Right, but they haven't.
The other thing... But they haven't, I know. And I mean, FAI absolutely should be applauded for doing what they did last year. But I would agree that we have to look at how vociferously they're putting this. We have to look at how we can interact with the other sports governing bodies in the different countries who are in the same pool and what their response is going to be. Because, I mean, obviously, if Israel do advance through this stage, they're then potentially going to be facing other teams. So this isn't just Ireland dealing with this. Other countries are going to have to deal with it as well. And I would say as well that this does also relate to state inaction. I mean, we talk about the hypocrisy of the reaction to Russia playing, for example, versus Israel in multiple sporting arenas. But the same is playing out in government. So if we don't see states passing the OTB, for example, if we don't see Europe dealing with the EU-Israel Association Agreement or placing the same sanctions on Israel as are being placed on Russia, as have been placed on other countries in the past, like South Africa, how do we expect governing bodies of sports to follow suit?
OK, but you're saying that it should be left up to the FAI, it should be left up to the players. You're not even prepared to offer an opinion on whether the game should go ahead.
I mean, I wouldn't play, but I mean, that's my point is that they are. I'm not saying that it's. I'm not offering an opinion, but what I'm saying, and I do think the security concerns in this instance are higher and need to be considered in a different way. But I just think within these discussions, we always lose the voice of the player. And they are the people who the ones who step on the pitch. So I want to hear from them what their concerns are, what their thoughts are, and how they are planning to handle this.
OK, I'll bring in Pádraig O'Sullivan as well, Fianna Fáil TD for Cork North Central. Morning, Pádraig.
Morning, David.
I mean, as a country, we have adopted a position on Israel on a number of planes. What's your view of this match? Should it go ahead in the Aviva?
It's quite difficult. I'm not trying to sit in the fence. I'm actually genuinely very ambivalent about it because, you know, I am a massive Ireland football fan. I've been involved in soccer from grassroots level all my life. When I saw this draw made, my heart sunk immediately. I knew that, you know, there was going to be fraught with difficulties, and, you know, ultimately there would be a very difficult decision for the FAI and UEFA perhaps down the road to make. But as of right now, I think, you know, the FAI have made their statement. They said they're going to fulfil the fixture at this point, and I think largely we need to respect that. I think they've been put in a very difficult position by UEFA, I suppose, not adopting a stronger stance in the round. But look, for myself, would I attend an Ireland match in Dublin against Israel? I probably wouldn't, to be honest. As much a fan as I would be, I suppose that would be my own personal form of protest, perhaps.
But, I mean, presumably there'll be a big security operation have to be mounted around this game. I mean, there have been suggestions perhaps even of the game being played behind closed doors. What would you think of that?
Well, I think the voice of the Garda Commissioner is going to be very important in all this. You know, there are going to be massive security implications. You know, you could argue that there would perhaps be as many protesters outside the stadium perhaps as there would be inside. I think that would be quite telling, I suppose, in terms of the nation's attitude and mood vis-a-vis the Israelis. So I would be very interested in hearing what the Garda Commissioner will have to say and the people, you know, that organise these massive events in Dublin.
Yeah, I mean, we had a texter in there pointing out that we've boycotted the Eurovision because of Israel's participation. Should we do the same with the Nations League?
Well, RT have taken that stance, as you know, as a broadcaster, and that's what I'm saying. Look, if the FAI was to adopt that position, I think, and consult its own members, as you mentioned, they had an EGM previously, and if they were to go down that route again and respect the will of their membership, then that's a matter for the FAI. And as I said, if UEFA, you know, in a European context, in a football context, make a decision, then I'm sure that the FAI will comply with that as well.
Sinead, what
if
about
I might add,
Yeah, sure, far ahead.
Yeah, just one thing I wanted to point out, because I think the sanctions are obviously hugely important, and they were a big decision-making factor in the case of the basketball situation. So I do think we need to hear from government if they're willing to compensate FAI should they face those sanctions, and just, you know, understand if there's ways that we can assist FAI as a state in taking a stronger stance on this. And I appreciate it's more than just financial sanctions. I do appreciate that for the players, this is the opportunity that is simply once in a lifetime for them. So I do think it's bigger than that. But one thing the state needs to be clear on is whether or not they can step in, if we can step in as a state and support the FAI in that situation.
Oh, Pádraig, would you support that?
Yeah, of course, but if Sinead will rightly recognise that the state is already heavily invested in the FAI and making massive contributions in terms of their overall debt, so I don't think the state would be found wanting when it comes to supporting Irish football, to be fair. OK, well, there we must leave it. Pádraig O'Sullivan, Fianna Fáil TD for Cork North Central. Sinead Gibney, Social Democrats TD for Dublin Rathdown, both members of the Oireachtas Sports Committee. Before that, Gavin Cooney, sports writer and broadcaster with the 42. Thank you all very much for bringing us that this morning.